That said, think about what was some of the most exciting things that happened in the past year. It is an annual impact report, so it does need to focus on the specific year, initiatives and impacts of that specific year. So to take 2022, what was particularly exciting and special that rises to the top? Was it a volunteer event? Was it a new packaging launch? Was it a specific advocacy effort? There are just a number of things that companies might have done in a year that just were kind of out of the box, not your run-of-the-mill stuff that happens every day. That said, that everyday stuff matters. Counting your waste, making sure you offer, a living wage to employees. All of those kind of run-of-the-mill things, they matter, but they don't need to be prioritized. There's a different ways to tell that story. And when we get into the section about all the various structures of the impact report, I think you'll see what we mean. The other point we want to raise is please don't forget your suppliers or stakeholders. For a lot of CPG companies, it's very challenging to get information on their suppliers. It's a real pain point. They're hard to survey. They're hard to understand what their own business structures are, certifications are. So it's easy to kind of give up. But try, because sometimes some of the best stories come out from, persevering and finding those suppliers with interesting stories. For many of us in a B2B professional services space, there are not that many suppliers. So it's a little easier to measure and find those suppliers, and also look at who are they? How many of them are local businesses? How many of them are women owned? How many of them minority owned? What is their story as well? And how are you helping them by spending your money with them? So often it's an overlooked opportunity for impact, and it could be kind of elevated to another level. This one seems kind of obvious to us who work in a social impact space, but it's less obvious in business overall, right? I mean, there's so much greenwashing going on out there, and there's so much distrust of many of the businesses who claim to have a sustainable angle, a sustainable story. And so transparency is rewarded. Honesty is authenticity. Authenticity is what leads to rewards. Talk about where you measured up and where you didn't. Share the good with the bad. It's tempting to let the marketing team sometimes kind of get ahead and put the marketing spin on something, but in the impact report is really not the place to do that. It is much more rewarding to be honest about what initiatives in the last year maybe you had high hopes for but didn't get to, and what did work. All right, if you're a public benefit corporation, and I don't know how many of you guys on the call are, we'd love to know that actually if you want to put it in comments. If you're a public benefit corporation, there's a high chance that you are legally required to file an impact report with your state. The one big exception is Delaware. So even if you're a Delaware benefit corporation and don't have the legal requirement, we would encourage you to still consider creating an impact report, as it's a wonderful way to highlight your company's work throughout the year. If you are registered in a state like California or Maryland or many other of the 49 states that have public benefit law, there are very specific individual state requirements that you need to meet. And it gets a little confusing fast. So to simplify this process, we've actually created a state-by-state guide for all of our unit of impact users, where you can check what are the specific requirements for your state are, and make sure to include that information on your individual company's impact report, so that you can file it with the state and meet the legal requirement. And this last thing, I've been hearing a lot in the last year as we've been getting out talking to companies, and the kind of common refrain I hear all the time, I'm new to this. Is it too early to produce an impact report? We only do a couple of things. We may only just do 2 or 3 things. Is there really enough to talk about to actually do an impact report? So my answer is always, it's never too early. Even if you're only measuring 2 or 3 things, you're already ahead of the game. There are many, many, many businesses out there that are not measuring anything at all. So don't get discouraged. You're on the path, and it is a journey. And this is not something we all do well from the beginning. It's a learning journey. And it's a great foundation to set goals and to improve and to kind of see where you want to be in a year from now and 2 years from now. For a lot of small businesses, it may feel very onerous to start with something like this, but that is exactly the reason why we created Unit of Impact, to simplify the process so small businesses, including solopreneurs, can have a way to tap into this. For so long, annual reports many years ago and now impact reports has been kind of a domain of large enterprises. And it's time for that to be changed, because when it comes down to it, small businesses are the ones that are making the biggest difference in their communities, and they should have a way to communicate that, specifically in an impact report. So there are a number of people who we worked with as our beta testers who are solopreneurs at this point, and have used the platform as solopreneurs to create their impact reports. And I am not sure if Kim with Mighty Elephant is here or Christy with Bigfoot for Good, but if you guys are, make sure to, first of all, thank you, and make sure to maybe share some of your experience and comments, because you were definitely an inspiration on how we created this tool to make sure that some of the solopreneurs have a way to tap into this platform as well. Okay, and then this seems kind of obvious, but I'll say it anyway. Your report is rich with information, so mine it. I think the common thing we see happen over and over is that you spend months and tons of resources of staff time and money, or hire an outside consultant or agency to help you create an impact report. And then you are so exhausted by the time it's published that you just kind of load it up to your website and forget it. And then the 9 months of the year, it quietly lives alone on the website, and maybe somebody finds it, maybe not. So we'd say, this is a great way to utilize all that work that was put into it, slice it and dice it, and use all that information throughout the year for your content calendar with metrics, testimonials, impact stories. It's a real asset that could be utilized year long, so that the conversation about impact is not just a once a year conversation. Russ, who writes all of our amazing blogs, had written a blog called The Making of Our Impact Report. So there's something on our website, on a blog post with some more ideas on how to utilize this throughout the year. And next, I'm going to pass this off to Elisa now to talk about what are some of the key ingredients that go into making an impact report. We talked about kind of prior to this about 5 different ways to think about the process and to think about how to approach the process. But what we find is for a lot of small businesses, they also just the getting it done piece is complicated. Where do you start? What do you include? What order do you include it in? What do we need to know? All of that sort of takes a lot of brain space. And so what we've done is created a structure with templates within Unit of Impact that takes all that away. You don't need to think about the structure. You don't need to think about the ingredients. It's all built in. It's just up to you to assemble them in the order that makes sense for your company. And with that, Elisa, take it away.
Thanks. So we've identified 8 key ingredients for a successful impact report. And you might not have all of these, and that's absolutely fine. But you should always think about what you have in terms of these ingredients, and as many as possible that you can do would be great for creating a well-rounded impact report. So the very first one is the brand foundation. And this is really for you to define at the very beginning of your report, who are you? Who is your company? It's great to include in this foundation your purpose statement or mission statement, your company's values, and then also the impact that your company is seeking to create. Your audience for this report might be people that know your company really well, but it also might not be. And so you want to be clear from the very beginning who you are. And at the same time, be clear about who your stakeholders are. So your audience can be stakeholders. Your stakeholders might not be an audience, but stakeholders for your company are foundational. And so make sure that you are identifying who they are and really speaking to them. The second key ingredient are your products and services. So you always be selling. That's the tip, right, for everything. And in terms of your impact report, it's a really good marketing tool for you. And so you don't need to go over the top with this, but just it's important to include this information about what is your company, what's driving the ability for your company to create impact. The third key ingredient is a stakeholder letter. So this could be something personal from the CEO or a founder. It might be a letter from your leadership team. And this is the ability for your company's leadership to really put it all out there, make certain that you're speaking to all of your key stakeholders, highlight your successes for the year, talk about maybe if there were areas of improvement that you identified during the year, and be sure in that stakeholder letter to briefly allude to the goals, like what's looking forward for the next year or the next 5 years. Those things can be included in the stakeholder letter. And another tip there is it's great to pair that with a photo. People like people's faces. So we made it really easy for you to have a letter from the stakeholder, include a signature, include a photo. The fourth key ingredient is the impact reporting. And this gets a bit meta to talk about impact reporting on your impact report. But really, that's what it's all about. The focus of this report is impact. So how do you show at a high level the proof of the impact? We like to think of it maybe as a by the numbers section. It could have the high level, like big numbers for your business. Maybe it's like your dollars donated or time volunteered or carbon impact or all of these different things that you can really quantify and share in number format. You could also have a few highlights, like what are the big things that happened this year that you really want to spotlight. It's a great place here to talk a little bit about the SDGs and the impacts that you have that meet the UN SDGs. The next ingredient, number 5, is storytelling. And this is really the ability for you to dive in and make it personal, make the numbers real. You know, in the last ingredient where we talk about the by the numbers, impact, proof of impact, storytelling is getting into the details. So people really identify with stories and narrative. And if you pair that with photos that show, your company engaging in the community or some environmental effects of your work or a video,